the valley between us. Some distances are measured in miles. Some are measured in everything that has already been lost. Gold Thread Studios, visual audiobook series. Dal Lake, Srinagar, Kashmir, where every surface holds both reflection and weight. Scene 1, the valley breathes. World building opening. Dawn. Kashmir as a living character. The landscape before the people. The weight beneath the beauty. The narrator establishes, something is about to change. Before the light comes, the water remembers it. Breath. The Dal Lake lies still in the last of the dark, a surface so smooth and so complete that it contains another world entirely. An inverted world where the mountains hang down into the depths and the sky is a floor you could walk on if only you were willing to trust the surface. Mist moves across the water in long, slow drafts, unhurried, purposeful, as if it has somewhere to be, but is not in any particular rush to get there. The shikaras are pulled up on their moorings, the boatmen still sleeping. The floating gardens drift at their anchors. The lotus stems stand in their thousands just below the surface, patient, waiting for light the way all growing things wait, without urgency, without doubt. Then the mountains catch fire. Not fire exactly, the Himalayan peaks take the first light the way a struck match takes flame, suddenly, completely, as if they were always burning and only needed the right angle of sun to make it visible. The summits go from gray to rose to gold in the space of a held breath, each ridge lifting itself out of darkness in sequence, a procession moving west to east, the mountains waking each other the way old friends do, gently, by simply being there. Beat. The valley floor is still in shadow. The valley always gets the light last. The mountains take it first, hold it a while, and then send it down. This is the order of things in Kashmir. A heron lifts from the bank of the lake and crosses the water without hurry, its reflection moving beneath it like a twin it has never acknowledged, and when it lands again it lands without disturbing a single inch of the surface. The water accepts it. The water accepts everything. It has been doing so for a very long time. Breath. The saffron fields begin at the edge of the village, irregular, low to the ground, a color that exists nowhere else in exactly this way, a purple violet that in certain lights appears to breathe. They were planted by people who are gone now. They are tended by people who will go. The saffron does not know this. The saffron simply grows and produces its 3 red threads per flower with a patience that embarrasses the ambitions of everyone around it. The harvest takes everything and returns it in a different form: spice, medicine, pigment, prayer. The valley trades in transformations. This is what it has always done. The china trees stand in their rows along the road that leads from the upper village down to the market square, ancient, enormous, their trunks thick as the walls of old mosques, their roots deeper than any foundation the valley has ever tried to sink. Their leaves are broad and 5-pointed, and in autumn they go the color of stopped hearts, red, copper, gold. It is not autumn yet. They are green now, fully leafed, and when the morning wind moves through them the sound is like water, like breath, like the particular quiet that falls between one kind of world and another. Beat. These trees were here before the first armies came. They will be here after the last ones leave. They have a patience that is almost frightening in its completeness. The call to prayer rises from the mosque 3 streets back from the lake. It rises the way smoke rises, not fighting the air, simply moving through it, finding every available space, filling the valley from the water to the tree lean to the first bare rock of the high slopes. It is a sound that does not demand. It invites. It has always invited. The valley receives it and sends it back, the stone faces of the mountains making the briefest of echoes, the sound returning fractured and softened and somehow more intimate for having traveled so far. Breath. And woven through all of this, the mist and the herons and the saffron and the ancient trees and the prayer threading up into the mountain light are the other things. The checkpoints, 4 of them between the village and the road to Pahalgam, their concrete barriers stained with 2 years of monsoons, the soldiers at them cold in the early morning. Young in the way that young men are young when the thing they are doing is serious, and they are not yet entirely sure they are old enough for it. The convoys that come through before the market stalls open 3 for trucks, moving with the particular sound that heavy vehicles make on mountain roads, a low grinding that the valley has learned to incorporate the way a body incorporates a scar, not forgetting. Simply accommodating. The barbed wire along the upper road that has been there long enough that the wildflowers have begun, patiently, to grow through it, not around it, through it. The wire and the flowers existing in the same space, with a coexistence that is not peace, but is something that resembles it from a certain distance. Beat. This is Kashmir in the hour before full light. Beautiful beyond reason. Heavy beyond accounting. A place that asks you, every single morning, to hold both of these things at once and not choose between them, because they are not separate things. They never have been. The beauty and the weight are the same substance. You cannot take one without carrying the other. Breath. The light is coming down off the mountains now, moving across the valley floor in a slow, deliberate tide, touching the rooftops first, then the walnut trees, then the surface of the lake, turning it from pewter to pewtered silver to something that approaches, just barely. Briefly gold. A dog barks somewhere in the upper streets. A shutter opens. The first smoke of morning rises from the first chimney. Beat. The valley is waking up. It does this every morning. It will do it every morning for as long as it is a valley, which is to say, always. And yet this particular morning, this exact arrangement of light and mist and smoke and prayer and barbed wire and herons and ancient trees will not come again. The valley knows this. It registers every version of itself the way the water registers everything that touches it, completely, briefly, without attachment. Breath. Something is about to change. The valley knows it. Beat, it always knows before the people do. It is composed of 10,000 years of change and has developed a sensitivity to the early signs, the particular quality of a morning that carries within it the seed of an after. This morning has that quality. Something in the arrangement of ordinary things. Something in the weight of the air. Something in the way the heron, lifting again from the banks east instead of west, toward the village, toward the market square, toward the walnut grove at the edge of things where, in 2 days, an ordinary moment will begin its quiet work of becoming something else entirely. The valley holds its breath. Long pause. It has been holding it for a long time. Scene 2. Amira's morning. Character introduction. Amira wakes before the call to prayer. Her embroidery. Her grief. Her grandmother. The pale blue shawl and what it carries. The unfinished china leaf. She is already awake when the call to prayer comes. Breath. This is how it has been since Tariq. Sleep leaves her before she is ready to let it go, withdraws like a tide that has its own schedule and consults no one. She lies in the dark for a moment after waking, taking inventory in the way she always does. The ceiling above, the window with its particular gray before dawn, the sound of her own breathing, the fact of being here, being continuous, being still the person she was when she went to sleep. Beat, these small confirmations take about 4 seconds. Then she gets up. Her room is small, which she does not mind. Small rooms are easier to fill. The embroidery frames lean against the walls at various angles, 3 of them, different sizes, and in the gray pre-dawn light they make the room look like the studio of someone much older, much more established. Someone whose work has had years and decades to accumulate into a kind of archive. In a way, it has. Amira began stitching at 9 years old, seated beside her grandmother, learning the language of thread before she had fully learned the language of words. She is 26 now. The frames have been accumulating since then. They are organized with a care the rest of her life often cannot manage, small to large along the east wall, works in progress on the west where the morning light will reach them first. The spools of thread occupy an entire shelf beside the window, arranged by color in a sequence that follows no catalog and every logic. It is her logic, developed over years of reaching for exactly the right shade in exactly the right moment. And it is precise enough that she can find any spool in the dark. She sometimes does. Sometimes she wakes in the night with a stitch in her mind, a specific angle, a specific tension, and she comes to the frame and works for an hour before returning to the sleep that still won't stay. Breath. The piece on the frame by the window is a china leaf. Crimson thread, a shade she mixed herself from 2 different spools to get the exact quality of red she needed, not orange red, not blue red, but a red that contains both simultaneously. The color of the china in late October when it is at the peak of what it is and already beginning to let go. The leaf's outline is complete. The central vein is complete. The secondary veins are complete. The interior fill is half done, the right side of the leaf finished in the dense satin stitch that catches light and shifts as you move it, the left side still bare linen, the ghost of what the leaf will be. Beat. She sits on the stool before the frame and looks at it in the coming light. She does not immediately pick up the needle. She looks at the mountains first. The window faces east. On clear mornings, she can see 3 peaks, not named peaks, not famous peaks, just the ordinary mountains that ring this side of the valley, their tops white 9 months of the year, their lower slopes in this season a deep forested green. She looks at them the way she looks at them every morning, without agenda. They are simply there. They have always been there. She finds this, on most mornings, a kind of steadiness. She thinks about Tarek. She always thinks about Tarek in the morning. This is not a choice she makes, it is a condition, like the light coming through the window, like the cold coming off the glass. He is simply present in the first minutes of her day, before the other things crowd in. And she has learned, over 3 years, to navigate this the way you navigate a room you have memorized in the dark, carefully, by feel, knowing exactly where the things are that will hurt you and moving around them. Breath. She lets herself remember his laugh. This is safe. The laugh is always safe. It is the first thing she learned she could take out and look at without breaking. Too loud. Entirely unself-conscious. The kind of laugh that happened to him rather than from him, that arrived before he could decide whether the thing was actually funny, so that often you heard his laugh before you heard the joke. It was the most generous thing about him, that laugh, because it made everything that preceded it seem more worth saying than it actually was. She had teased him about it once. She wishes now that she had teased him about it 100 more times. Beat. She does not let herself remember the rest. She has learned, at great cost, through the first year which was catastrophic, through the second year which was only very hard, through the third year which is what it is, she has learned which memories are safe to take out and which must remain in their box. The box is not a metaphor. She has a small wooden box on the shelf above the thread, painted blue, and inside it is a folded piece of paper on which she wrote, once, during the worst of it, a list of the things she was not going to think about. The list is thorough. The box stays closed. Breath. Tarek wanted to study architecture. This is the one fact about his future she allows herself to carry, the one that is specific enough to be real and general enough to be born. He had drawn buildings in the margins of every notebook since he was 14. Buildings that belonged to no particular tradition, part Mughal, part something he was inventing as he went, arched and open and full of light. He would have been good at it. She knows this not because she is his sister, but because she knew how to look at his drawings and see in them the quality that would have been excellent. She would have embroidered something for his first building. She had told him this. He had laughed, too loudly, too immediately, and she had smiled. Beat. From the kitchen. The sound of the kettle. Zainab is up. This is how Amira knows her mother is still in the world, by the sound of the kettle, the sound of the single cup placed on the counter, the sound of the specific silence that follows. Zainab was vibrant once. Amira carries this knowledge the way she carries the fact of Tarek's laugh, carefully, as evidence of what was, and therefore of what is still possible, somewhere, in theory. Her mother moves through the house now like smoke, present, undeniable, not quite solid, not quite anchored. Amira does not push. She does not know how to push without breaking things. She makes sure there's food. She makes sure the bills are paid. She makes sure the kawa is always in the cabinet. These are the things she can do. She does them thoroughly. Breath. She rises. She dresses in the gray morning light, trousers, long tunic, The usual layers because the valley mornings are cold even in this season, the chill coming off the mountains with a generosity it never quite revokes before the afternoon. And then she lifts the pale blue shawl from the hook behind the door and wraps it around her shoulders. Beat. The shawl is embroidered, not by her, which is the important thing. It was made in a workshop in the old city, embroidered with small white flowers along the border, the kind of piece sold in tourist shops for a price that does not reflect what it cost to make. Tarek saved for 3 months to buy it. He gave it to her on the morning of Eid, 3.5 years ago, folded in newspaper, because he hadn't thought about the wrapping until the moment of giving. She had unwrapped it standing in this doorway and put it on immediately, right over her nightclothes, because she knew immediately that it was exactly the right blue. He had watched her, too pleased with himself to be dignified about it, and then he had laughed, too loudly, too fast, and she had laughed back. Breath. She wears the shawl every day. This is the only fact about Tarek that she carries openly, visibly, in the world where other people can see it. Everything else is private. This is not. She sits at the frame. She threads the needle with the crimson thread, the specific shade, the mix of 2 spools, and she begins to work. Beat. The physical act of embroidery is not meditative in the way people who don't do it imagine it to be. It requires precision. It requires a continuous series of small decisions, the angle of entry, the length of the stitch, the direction of the lay, the tension. Too loose and the thread puckers when the fabric shifts. Too tight and the fabric distorts, bunching itself around the stitch like a complaint. The tension must be consistent, and the consistency must be maintained by feel, not measurement, which means that you must be paying attention in a very specific and continuous way. Your hands must know what they are doing. The needle goes in there at the angle decided and comes through to the back, and the thread follows, and you feel the resistance of the fabric and the give of the thread, and you pull to exactly the right point, and you stop. Then you go again. Beat. 1 stitch at a time. 1 deliberate act at a time. A pattern emerging from repetition. This is not meditation. It is more like arithmetic, precise, cumulative, satisfying in the way that things are satisfying when they are done correctly. She is working the interior fill of the China leaf. Satin stitch, slightly diagonal. The stitches lying builds, parallel and the close. Left half of the leaf each comes one advancing from the linen by a fraction takes on substance and color, becomes what it was always going to be. She works. Breath. The crimson is Tarek's color. She had not planned this when she began the piece. She chose the crimson because it was right for the China leaf, because the China in October is exactly that shade, and she had been 3 sessions in before she understood what she was doing. By then it was too late to change the color, and she did not want to. She is making a China leaf in her brother's color. She will finish it. She will sell it to someone who will not know this. They will hang it on a wall somewhere and look at it occasionally and think, that is a beautiful red. And somewhere in her the fact of it will sit, known, private, complete. Beat. She reaches the central vein with the next row of stitches. She adjusts the angle. She is pulling the thread through at a careful tension when the thought arrives, the one she has not let arrive this morning yet, the one she knows the geography of and has been navigating around. She wore a red jacket the day he. She stops the thought. Precisely, immediately, the way you stop a stumble, a quick internal correction, a refusal to complete the fall. She pulls the thread. She sets the stitch. She does not look at the box on the shelf. She continues. Breath. Nanny Jan appears in the doorway. She does not knock. Nanny Jan has never knocked in this house, has never needed to, moves through it with the authority of someone who is its oldest living structure, older than the walls, older certainly than the grief, older than anything the house has been asked to hold. She is carrying 2 cups of kawa, the green tea steeped with cardamom and cinnamon and saffron, each cup the color of pale gold, the steam coming off it in slow curls. She crosses the room without speaking and places 1 cup beside Amira's embroidery frame, and then settles herself on the edge of the cot with the particular careful deliberateness of a woman whose body has become a negotiation. She holds her own cup in both hands. She looks at her granddaughter's hands moving. The silence between them is comfortable. It has been comfortable for 26 years. It is the kind of silence that is its own form of conversation, that has texture and content, that communicates without requiring the inefficiency of words. They drink their kawa. Amira stitches. The light comes on. Beat. After a long while, Nanny Jan says, "The market is Thursday." Amira nods, her eyes on the frame. "Bring the shawl pieces," Nanny Jan says. "The ones with the walnut motif. The tourist woman asked for them last time." Amira says, "I remember." Nanny Jan watches her a moment longer. Then she says, in the tone she uses for things she has already noticed, but waited to mention, "You stitched past midnight again." Amira says, "The light was good." This is technically a lie, and Nanny Jan knows it is technically a lie, and Amira knows that Nanny Jan knows, and neither of them addresses this directly because this is how they love each other, with a steadiness that does not require everything to be said. Nanny Jan sips her koa. She watches her granddaughter's hands move over the frame, precise, unhurried, as if time is something that can be shaped from the inside, bent into usefulness by the application of enough care. Breath. She says nothing more. She finishes her koa. She pushes herself up from the cot and takes both cups back to the kitchen, and the room settles into its quiet, and Amira stitches on. After a while, she puts down the needle. The china leaf is still unfinished, the left half now advanced by the morning's work, perhaps 2/3 complete, the pattern clear. She looks at what she has done, and then she looks at the mountains. Beat. The mountains do not look back. They simply are. The peaks hold their light and their snow and their extraordinary indifference to everything being felt beneath them. She finds this, somehow, comforting. There is relief in things that do not require you to mean anything to them. Scene 3. The uniform arrives. Arjun's introduction. The convoy. The village registers it. Arjun sets up. The old man. First journal entry. The medic who chose medicine for the right reasons and is beginning to understand where he stands. The convoy comes through at mid-morning, 4 trucks and a medical vehicle, moving in the particular single-file formation that mountain roads require, the engine noise arriving ahead of the vehicles themselves, traveling down off the upper road in a low mechanical rumble that the valley receives the way a body receives bad news. A slight tightening, a brief suspension of the ordinary. Breath. The village registers it without appearing to. This is a skill acquired over years and refined through necessity, the skill of receiving information and not displaying the receiving. Shutters that were open come half-closed. A child who is playing at the edge of the road is called inside, not urgently, not loudly, just firmly, in the tone that means now and means also. You know why. The vegetable seller continues arranging his display with studied indifference, stacking tomatoes with a concentration that suggests the most important thing happening in his world is the geometry of tomatoes. His hands, however, move faster than they were moving. Beat. The trucks pull into the cleared ground by the edge of the upper market, the space that has been used for this purpose before, that has a kind of institutional memory, the grass flattened in patterns that record previous occupations. The vehicles settle. Engines cut. The sound the valley makes without them is briefly, almost shockingly clean, the stream, the wind, a bird. Breath. Arjun steps out of the last truck. He squints in the mountain light with the expression of someone who finds it unexpectedly beautiful and is not sure whether to admit this. He is tall enough that stepping out of the truck requires a slight adjustment, a moment of reorganizing himself in the new space. He is carrying a canvas bag of medical supplies across one shoulder, and he is looking at the village with the particular attentiveness of someone who is trying to understand a place before they do anything else in it. Beat. He takes it in. The old wooden houses with their carved eaves, the wood darkened with decades of weather to a deep walnut brown that in certain light is almost black, the carvings floral, geometric, intricate, worn at their edges, but still legible, still a declaration of something that believed in its own permanence. The walnut trees that line the road to the market, their bark furrowed and deeply textured, their canopies broad enough to make real shade on the road beneath. The stream that runs through the center of the market square, clear and fast and purposeful over smooth stones, cold as the intention it moves with. He notes all of this. He is good at noting. Medicine teaches you to note. Breath. He notes also the way the locals don't look at the convoy. The deliberate periphery of vision attention, the awareness that tracks without acknowledging, that registers without conceding the registering. He understands this. He does not take it personally. He takes it seriously, which is different. Taking something personally requires making it about yourself. Taking it seriously requires making it about the truth. The truth is, this valley has reasons for the way it looks at uniforms. He knows some of those reasons. He suspects there are more he doesn't know yet, and he is making no assumptions. Beat. Rahul falls in beside him as he crosses to the cleared ground where the medical tent is to be set up. Rahul, who is the same height as Arjun but occupies about 30% more space in any given room, whose energy is its own weather system, whose affection expresses itself in an unbroken narration of everything he is currently thinking. He is talking about the mountain air, the quality of it, the specific coldness, whether his sinuses will adjust or whether he is in for a month of misery. He is talking about the mess cook's chai. He is talking about his sister's upcoming wedding and the precise shade of the lenga his mother has ordered and whether anyone considered asking him before committing to that particular shade of pink. He is talking. Arjun is listening, responding in the easy shorthand of two people who have kept each other company across long distances and difficult postings, and have developed a shared language efficient enough to communicate entire positions in 3 words. Breath. They set up the medical tent with the efficiency of people who have done this before. The tent goes up in its correct configuration. The examination table unfolds. The supply bags are opened and catalogued, Arjun's hands moving through the inventory with the quiet fluency of someone for whom these objects are a vocabulary. Bandages, sutures, antiseptic, the pain medications in their locked case, the antibiotics organized by type, the syringes, the 4 bags. Everything in its place. He closes the last bag and surveys the tent, and it is exactly what it needs to be, a space where people can be helped. This is all he has ever required of any space. Beat. He is organizing the examination table when he sees the old man. Perhaps 70, perhaps older, the mountain villages produce people whose age is difficult to read because the life is hard and the bone structure is strong, so that both youth and age express themselves differently than they do in cities. He is moving down the upper path slowly, favoring his right knee in the specific, compensatory way of someone who has been managing that knee for years. The gait adjusted, the weight shifted, the whole posture organized around an accommodation. He carries a cloth bag and a stick. He moves past the camp perimeter without looking at it. Breath. Arjun watches him. He does not think about it. He steps toward the edge of the camp perimeter, not through it, not claiming the road, just to the edge. He says in Kashmiri, the words careful, learned, pronounced with the slight deliberateness of someone who has studied a language but not yet inhabited it. Pawn, may I? He gestures toward the man's knee. Not pointing, not insisting. Just indicating, with an open hand, that he has seen what the man's body is managing and would like to offer something. Beat. The old man stops. He looks at Arjun, at the uniform first, at the face second. This is the order people here have learned to do it, and it is the correct order, and Arjun knows it is the correct order and does not resent it. The man's face takes in the face beneath the uniform and makes a calculation that takes perhaps 3 seconds and arrives at its conclusion with the dignity of someone who has been making such calculations for a very long time. He shakes his head. Not unkindly. Not with anger. With a patience that is its own kind of refusal, a refusal that has been thought about, that knows its own reasons, that is not waiting to be argued out of them. He continues down the road. Arjun watches him go. His hands are still at his sides, open, not fists, the offer still visible in the posture of them even after the refusal. He stands there for a moment in the mountain light. Then he goes back to the tent. He says nothing to Rahul about it. Rahul has moved on to a detailed analysis of whether the mess cook has ever, in his entire life, tasted cardamom. Arjun responds appropriately. He is present. And also, Part of him is still watching the old man's gait as he moves down the road, cataloging what he saw, the specific compensation, the likely cause, the things that could be done for it that won't be done today. Breath. That evening, after the camp has settled into its off-hours rhythm, the card games, the quietly playing phone, the sounds of young men who are trying not to think about where they are by talking about everywhere else they would rather be. Arjun sits at his desk in the corner of the medical tent that serves as his quarters and opens his journal. He writes, "First evening, Pahalgam posting. The valley is extraordinary. I don't know how else to say it. I know that's not a useful clinical observation, but it is the true one. The light coming off the peaks in the late afternoon is a color I don't have a name for. Not gold, not orange. Something between them that only exists here, at this elevation, at this hour. The china trees along the road catch it and hold it for about 15 minutes and then let it go. I watched this happen from the tent entrance and felt something I haven't felt at a posting before, which is the acute awareness that I am somewhere that matters. Not for the conflict, though that, obviously, matters enormously, and I am not forgetting it. For itself. The place itself matters, independent of everything being done in it. The old man. I want to write about the old man. He was managing a right knee, probably early to mid osteoarthritis, possibly an old injury, impossible to say without examination, which I did not get to do. I offered. He declined. I understand the declination. I do not want to be the kind of person who fails to understand it. The valley doesn't trust us yet. I'm not sure it should. I'm not sure I would either if I were standing on the other side of what I'm wearing. That's not a criticism of the posting or the mission. It's just the truth as I see it from where I'm standing, and I've always thought it was important to see the truth even when it's inconvenient to the story you'd rather be telling about yourself. I am here to do one thing. I am here to help people heal. I intend to do that with everything I have, and to earn whatever trust makes it possible, as slowly as it needs to be earned. Tomorrow, I'll check the supply inventory against the manifest. There's a discrepancy in the antiseptic count that Rahul says is from the last posting, but that I want to verify myself. The stars here are extraordinary. That's not a clinical observation either. I'm leaving it in anyway. He closes the journal. He looks at the tent opening, where the mountain silhouette cuts into the star-filled sky, a solid, definitive darkness against the field of light above it, the line between them as sharp as if someone drew it with intention. Beat. He tells himself, I am here to do one thing. I am here to help people heal. He has always been good at doing the thing that needs doing. He chose medicine because of his younger sister Priya's illness, 3 weeks in a hospital when he was 14 and she was 9, 3 weeks of watching doctors work and understanding, with a clarity that surprised him at the time, that this was what hands were for. He has never since been uncertain about what his hands are for. He is not uncertain now. Breath. He lies down. He listens to the valley, the distant stream, the wind through the China Grove, the enormity of the mountains doing what mountains do, which is simply exist. Patient. Permanent. Without apology. He is going to do what he came here to do. He is clear about this. He is clear about almost everything. He closes his eyes. Outside, the valley holds its extraordinary dark, and the stars above the peaks are doing what stars do, burning, improbably, at a distance so great it has no practical relationship to anything being felt beneath them, and yet giving light. Beat, still giving light. Scene 4, the marketplace. Thursday. The market. Amira at her stall. The soldiers moving through. The moment across 40 feet. 3 seconds. A look that has its own weather. Thursday comes the way Thursdays in the village always come, with the market. Breath. It unfolds in the square by the stream as it has unfolded, in one form or another, in this spot for a very long time, longer than anyone's grandmother can remember, which in this valley is the standard measure of permanence. The stalls set up before full light, the vegetables first, because the sellers have been awake since the earliest hours collecting from their gardens and fields, and they want their best produce out before the morning chill goes. Then the spice sellers and the dry goods and the cloth merchants. Then, along the stream side where the ground is level and the light in mid-morning falls at the best angle for showing the work, the artisans. Beat. Amira arrives early, as she always does, to claim her space. She lays out her embroidered pieces with a care that is itself a kind of statement, not about her, specifically, but about the work, which deserves to be seen correctly, in the right relation to the light, without being crowded or obscured. The shawls go at the back, hanging from the frame she carries folded in her bag and assembles in 3 minutes flat. The smaller pieces, the frame squares, the individual motifs, go on the cloth she spreads on the ground, anchored at the corners with smooth stones from the stream. The tablecloth with the paisley border goes to the right where the light will hit it broadside in the late morning and show the texture of the satin stitch. Breath. She arranges them by color, cool tones to the left, the blues and greens and silvers, warm tones to the right. It is a small control over a world that often refuses to be controlled. She steps back and looks at what she has made, and it is right. She sits on the low stool she also carries folded in her bag, another 3-second assembly, and she waits for the market to fill around her. Beat. The saffron seller sets up 3 stalls to her left, an elderly man whose product is, in Amira's private opinion, the finest in the valley, and who knows this so completely that he never mentions it. The saffron is simply there. Its smell fills the nearby air with something between sweetness and dark earth, something that has no analog, that exists only as itself. The spice merchant arrives with his burlap sacks stacked on a handcart, cumin, dried ginger, the small cardamom pods that release their fragrance when you press a thumbnail into them. The woman who sells dried mulberries and walnut oil takes the space across the stream, her jars arranged with her own version of Amira's cool-to-warm logic. Breath. And then the sound of the market itself, the layered sound of a place where many languages coexist in pragmatic harmony, Kashmiri flowing between neighbors, Hindi moving between sellers and certain buyers. The occasional cluster of tourist English asking the price of everything in tones that suggest price is a variable they find both interesting and slightly offensive. Children running along the stream bank. The particular bargaining cadence, offer, counter, pause, counter, that final silence in which both parties assess the total situation and one of them concedes, that has been conducted in this square for as long as the market has been here. Beat. Amira sells 2 pieces in the first hour. The first to an older woman from the next village who examines the walnut motif shawl with the unhurried expertise of someone who has been buying and using embroidered shawls for 50 years and knows the difference between machine-made and hand-stitched at a single touch. She runs her fingers along the back of the piece, feeling for the thread continuity, the density of the foundation, and she makes a sound that in this context means, yes, this is the real thing. She names a price. Amira considers. She comes down slightly, not because the price is too high, but because the woman has a granddaughter who sometimes plays with the children near the stream and has good manners. The woman takes the shawl and folds it with the practiced economy of someone who has carried things carefully for a long time. Breath. The second sale is to a young couple from somewhere far south, their clothes, their phones, the quality of their confusion about the local geography all conspire to place them at considerable distance from home. They hold the small framed china leaf motif up to the light together, turning it, and their appreciation is genuine. This is the thing that occasionally surprises Amira about tourists, the genuineness of the appreciation, when it comes. They don't know what it took to make the piece, they don't know the hours, the light conditions, the specific quality of attention. But they feel it. The work communicates something even when the context is missing. She finds this, on her better days, quietly consoling. She accepts their money. She nods her thanks. She does not explain the stitches. She never explains the stitches. Beat. The soldiers come through mid-morning. Not the whole unit, 3 of them, making the standard presence check that is both their job and their imposition, and that the village has accommodated with the particular weary practicality of people who have been accommodating things they did not choose for a long time. They move through the market with the studied normalcy of soldiers who have been told to look unthreatening and are doing their best, which is not entirely successful because the uniform itself carries its own weight regardless of the face above it. They check IDs when asked, which is not often. They don't look for trouble. They constitute it by their presence regardless, and the market adjusts. Voices lower. Transactions complete faster. A young man pockets his mobile phone before they approach, a smooth, practiced movement that contains an entire history. Breath. Amira wraps her hands in the pale blue shawl beneath the table and waits for them to pass. She has learned to do this, the stillness, the withdrawal, the reduction of self to something that requires nothing and attracts nothing. She watches the ground near her display. She counts the stitches on the nearest piece without actually looking at it. She breathes. Beat. They pass. The market recalibrates. Volume returns by increments. The vegetable seller resumes a conversation with his neighbor that was suspended mid-sentence. And then she sees him. Beat. He is not with the three who came through. He is at the edge of the market, the far edge, by the walnut trees, off-duty in whatever way a soldier in a posted zone can be off-duty, which is never entirely, but sometimes partially. The uniform worn but the official function suspended for the length of an errand or a moment of ordinary being in a place. He is standing at the edge of the market crowd, and she might not have noticed him at all except that he is doing something that makes him visible. He is bending down. A tall man bending, which has its own kind of ungainliness, a particular comedy of long limbs and redistributed weight. He is collecting onions from the ground. An elderly woman's bag has split. She has dropped a full kilo of onions, and they are rolling in every direction under the feet of the market crowd, and no one has stopped except him. He is down on one knee collecting onions, handing them back one by one, the woman accepting them without looking at him or acknowledging him, turning her face slightly away with a dignity that is its own complete position. He stands up. He has 2 onions left, one in each hand, and the woman has already turned and is walking away, her bag repaired with a tucked fold that will hold for now. He stands in the market crowd with an onion in each hand. Breath. And his expression, Amira can read it from across 40 feet of market crowd, through the intervening bodies and the movement and the sound. She can read it with the clarity she brings to the back of an embroidered piece where the true character of the work is visible, not wounded. Not indignant. Not the expression of a man who did a kind thing and was not thanked and has feelings about it. Simply accepting. The look of someone who understood, before he bent down, that the old woman's silence was not a verdict on his worth as a person, but an accurate accounting of what the uniform has cost people who did not choose to pay it, and who had decided in advance that he was not going to dispute the accounting. Beat. He sets the 2 remaining onions on the nearest flat surface, the corner of the spice merchant's display, with a care that is automatic, unthought, and then he straightens, and he turns, and across 40 feet of Thursday market in the valley of Kashmir. His eyes find hers. Pause. 3 seconds. Beat. The kind of 3 seconds that has its own weather, its own specific atmospheric pressure, its own temperature, its own particular quality of light that exists only inside itself and cannot be replicated before or after. It is not a moment of recognition, exactly. It is something less defined and more consequential. 2 people looking at each other without the usual management, without the usual allocation of attention, actually looking, in the way that is different from seeing. In the way that requires something of both people simultaneously. Beat. Amira looks away first. Then he does. She does not know why she held his gaze as long as she did. 3 seconds is not a long time by any ordinary measure, and yet it was longer than she intended and longer than she understood. She turns back to her display. She straightens an embroidered shawl that does not need straightening. Her hands are steady. She is fine. Breath. Something has settled into her chest, like something set down carefully, not dropped, not thrown, set down. She does not name it. She does not look up. She straightens the shawl again, it still doesn't need it, and then she makes her hands stop. Beat. The market continues. The saffron smell persists in the air. The stream moves past the market square with its usual indifference to everything being conducted along its banks. The light shifts, clouds moving across the mountain gap where the sun has been coming through, and the golden quality of the morning diffuses into something cooler and more even, and Amira sits in it and breathes, and lets the market be the market. Breath. By mid-afternoon, the pace slackens. The tourist couple has gone, their purchases folded into their bag. The elderly woman from the next village is long gone. The saffron seller begins breaking down his display, a process he conducts with the same unhurried certainty with which he set it up. Amira wraps her unsold pieces, there are several, in the protective cloth and bundles them with practiced efficiency, tying the bundle at the corners, slinging it over her shoulder. She dismantles her frame in 3 minutes. She dismantles her stool in 3 seconds. She picks up her things. She does not look toward the edge of the market where the walnut trees are. Beat. She does not need to. She already knows, with a certainty she cannot explain and does not try to, that he is no longer there. Pause. She does not examine how she knows this. She ties the cloth bundle, picks it up, and walks home through the village in the afternoon light with the shawl around her shoulders and the stream running to her right and the mountains doing what the mountains do, which is simply be there, which is, as she has established, enough. Scene 5, stitched in silence. Evening. Amira at the frame. The internal argument. The question she hasn't let herself ask in 3 years. The thread that snaps. The answer that comes back very small. The golden hour comes to the valley every evening as a gift, and like many gifts, it does not last long enough. Breath. It arrives through Amira's east window, sideways, the way evening light always comes, hitting the embroidery frame at an angle that makes the threads luminous, makes each color more precisely itself. So that the crimson of the china leaf becomes something that seems to generate its own light rather than merely reflecting the lamps. This is the best light for seeing the work clearly. It lasts 15 minutes. She uses every one of them. Beat. The house makes its sounds. Zainab in the kitchen, the particular note of a pot on the stove, the wooden floor giving its familiar creak at the third board from the window, the creak she has heard 10,000 times, and which registers not as sound, but as the ordinary texture of being home. The call to prayer spirals up from the mosque and moves through the house the way it always does, through every room, finding the corners, settling over everything like a hand placed gently on a shoulder, present without insisting. Outside, the mountain light is going. Inside, the lamp compensates. Breath. Amira works. The china leaf. The crimson fill. The left side advancing one careful row at a time. She is in that state of needlework where the hands have taken over the primary responsibility and the mind is technically free, not blank. The mind is never blank, but freed from the immediate management of the stitching, available for other things. Other things she would prefer not to think about are available to her. Beat. She thinks about the soldier with the onions. Pause. She does not want to. She tells herself, firmly, that she is thinking about the pattern, about the final row of fill, about whether to add a suggestion of gold threading to the leaf's border, about the commercial piece she needs to complete by next week for the shop in the old city that takes her work on consignment. She is thinking about these things. All of these things. And also, beneath them and alongside them and through them, she is thinking about the soldier with the onions. Breath. She has felt attraction before. She wants to be clear with herself about this, not to herself. She is always clear with herself about these things. There is no profit in obscuring the truth from yourself. She has felt attraction before. In the years before Tariq, briefly, quietly, a boy in the old city who made her laugh, and then the conflict worsened and he and his family moved south and that was that. In the first year of her grief, nothing. In the second year, a brief awareness of a young teacher at the school who had kind eyes and impractical optimism, and she had put the awareness away carefully as you put away something you cannot afford to keep. She is not confused about the existence of attraction. She has had it and set it down and moved on. She is practiced at this. She is, in fact, very good at it. What unsettles her is not attraction. What unsettles her is the expression on his face. Breath. She has seen soldiers ignore the people they pass. She has seen soldiers perform friendliness, the performed gesture, the performed smile, the goodwill that is aware of itself as goodwill and therefore slightly poisons itself. She has seen soldiers angry at being refused, at the averted eyes, the pocket phone, the turned backs, the 1,000 small refusals that the village makes and that are all it has to make, and which some soldiers receive as insults to themselves rather than responses to the uniform. She has seen soldiers guilty, and that is almost worse, the guilt, because guilt looks for relief from the person who has caused the pain and that is asking too much. Beat. She has not seen a soldier look the way he looked when the old woman turned away. Accepting. Not passive. There is a difference between accepting and not caring, and she could see the difference from 40 feet away. He cared. The onions were evidence of that. He bent and collected onions because he saw that someone needed help and he helped, not calculating, not performing, not aware of an audience. He just bent and collected onions. And when the woman turned without acknowledging him, he stood up and his face said, "I understand that what I am wearing has a bill attached to it that I didn't generate but am being charged for, and I am not going to dispute the bill. I am going to leave the onions on the counter and go on." Breath. She pulls the thread. She is constructing an argument with herself, which is a thing she does, a thorough, honest, both sides argument, conducted in the specific privacy of her own head while her hands do something else. The argument goes. She knows what the uniform means. She is not confused about what it means. She knows what it has cost this family, cost this valley, cost the people she loves most in the world. She knows about the checkpoint. She knows about the shot fired in confusion and what confusion costs when it costs a 22-year-old boy who was in the wrong place because he was everywhere. He went everywhere. He was curious about everything, and that curiosity took him to places where the right place and the wrong place are sometimes indistinguishable until it is too late to distinguish them. She knows about that. She lives in that. She wears the evidence of it across her shoulders every single day. Beat. And still, the argument continues. She is not confused about any of that, and still the memory of that face across the market sits in her the way a splinter sits. Not the primary sensation, not the only thing she feels, but present, specific. Too particular to ignore. 3 seconds across a market is not a relationship. 3 seconds across a market is nothing. She has made something out of nothing before and been entirely wrong. She is almost certainly making something out of nothing now. Breath. She pulls the thread and it catches on the rough edge of the needle's eye. She pulls again. Beat. It snaps. A clean break, 2 inches from the needle. Pause. She goes still. Her hands, which have been moving with the continuous purpose of embroidery, simply stop. She sits with the needle in one hand and the broken thread in the other, and she looks at the break, the 2 clean ends, the thread still attached to the fabric on one side, the thread dangling from the needle on the other. A clean separation. Nothing ambiguous about it. Breath. She does not immediately repair it. She lets her hands rest in her lap, the needle in one hand and the broken thread in the other, and she looks at the china leaf on the frame half done, the right side luminous in the lamplight, the left side still the bare pale ground of the unworked linen. And she thinks, what is it that I want? Beat. Not from him. She is not asking what she wants from him, who is a stranger, a uniform, a face across a market, and an expression she has perhaps entirely misread. She is asking something larger and older and more honest than that. What do I want? Not from this person or any specific person. From anything. From any of it. What have I allowed myself to want since Tarek? Since the box went on the shelf and the shawl went on the hook and I made myself small enough to fit inside the life that was left? Breath. Long pause. The answer comes back very quietly. Very honestly. Almost nothing. She has made herself very small on the inside, deliberately, methodically, over 3 years of practice, because smaller things are harder to break. She has kept the wanting small. The embroidery, the market, the shawl, the sound of Nanny Jan in the morning, the kawa at dawn. These are the things she has allowed herself to want, because they are reliable, because they are within reach, because they do not depend on anything that can be taken away at a checkpoint. Beat. She has made herself very small on the inside. She has been very good at it. And she is sitting in the lamplight with a broken thread in her hand and looking at the unfinished leaf, and something in her is sitting very still with the question she just asked and not moving away from it. Breath. She reties the thread. The knot is neat, small, exactly right. She threads the needle again. She finds the last stitch's exit point on the back of the fabric and continues from it without losing a single stitch of progress. She is good at this, continuing without losing ground. She has had a lot of practice at this. Beat. She continues. The china leaf advances. The crimson fills the linen. Outside the window, the mountains are going dark. In the kitchen, Zainab puts the pot on the back of the stove and the sound changes. In the house, all the familiar sounds proceed with their familiar exactness, and Amira stitches on, and the question she asked remains unanswered in the room, which means it remains open, which is, she notes, the first time she has left something open in 3 years. Breath. She notes this. She does not do anything with it. She stitches. Scene 6, Arjun at night. The camp at night. Arjun's journal. The woman at the market. The one line he crosses out and then does not recross. The mountains outside the tent, patient and permanent. The camp at night has its own texture, different from the day's purposefulness, not quite as relaxed as true rest, the particular suspension of people who are never entirely off duty and have found a way to be approximately at ease within that condition. Breath. Somewhere, someone's phone is playing film music, kept just below the threshold that would invite a comment, the volume calibrated with the precision that soldiers develop for exactly this kind of thing. Present enough to be heard by the people nearby who would want to hear it, quiet enough to be denied by the people who wouldn't. Someone is playing cards, the sound of cards on a surface, the clipped shorthand of a game being played by people who know each other's tells. Someone is writing a letter. Rahul is, by the sound of it, attempting to explain his sister's wedding preparations to someone who has made the mistake of asking a follow-up question and is now committed to a thorough accounting of every logistical and familial dimension of the event. Beat. Arjun is at his desk. The medical tent is the only one with a desk, a necessity of the job, which generates paperwork, which generates the need for a surface on which to do paperwork. It also gives him a corner of semi-privacy that the other tents don't have, which is a trade-off for the fact that he is also on call at all hours in the way that the card players are not. He accepts the trade. He has always been someone who preferred the defined responsibility over the vague one. Breath. He opens the journal. His pen is in his hand. He looks at the blank page for a moment. Unusual. He is generally not the kind of writer who looks at blank pages. He is the kind who fills them quickly and without ceremony, the thoughts already organized before the pen touches the paper. Tonight, something is slightly different. The page looks back at him. He gives it a moment. Beat. Then he writes. Thursday. Market day. I went through briefly in the morning, not on duty, just through. Wanted to see how it worked, what the space looked like, what the rhythm was. The valley on a market day is its own kind of proof of something. Of persistence, probably. Of the fact that ordinary life continues to conduct itself with remarkable determination even inside circumstances that are anything but ordinary. The spice sellers and the vegetable sellers and the stream running through the middle of it all and the sound of Kashmiri and Hindi and tourist English existing in the same square meter of air, it's something. I don't quite have the word for what it is. I'm leaving that blank for now. Corporal Tiwari's boot situation has gotten worse. He is not going to tell me about it voluntarily, which means I'm going to have to raise it directly, and he's going to be embarrassed, which is an unnecessary quantity of discomfort for a problem with a straightforward solution. I'll talk to him tomorrow. Gently but directly, which is the only way I know how to talk to people about their feet. The old man with the knee from yesterday, I keep thinking about him. Not with regret about the refusal. The refusal was correct, and I don't need to be forgiven for understanding that. I keep thinking about the knee itself. The specific compensation in his gait, the way the right hip slightly over-rotates to spare the joint on the downhill. The problem compounds with time and altitude. I hope someone, at some point, helps him with it. I hope it can be me if he's willing. I'm not going to push. I'm going to be in the same place until I'm not, and I'm going to keep the offer open. There is a woman at the market embroidery stall, near the stream, the stall with the good pieces, genuinely good, the kind of work that knows what it's doing. She looked at me the way people here sometimes look at the uniform, calculating the distance between what they hope and what they fear, doing it fast, doing it behind the eyes where it can't quite be seen but can be felt if you're paying attention. Except for 3 seconds, I couldn't quite categorize, because for 3 seconds I thought she was measuring something else entirely. I might have been wrong. I'm probably wrong. She looked away first. I wasn't fast enough to look away at all. I'm almost certain I was wrong. He closes the journal. He sits with it under his hand on the desk, the lamp throwing its steady circle of light across the surface. Outside, the mountain silhouette is a solid darkness against the starfield, the boundary between earth and sky as definitive as a decision. Breath. He thinks about the posting. He is clear-eyed about it. He has always been the kind of person who prefers clarity, who finds comfort in accurate assessment rather than comfortable distortion. He knows what the valley carries. He has read the histories, the ones that were available to him, knowing they were partial, knowing any account of a complicated conflict is partial, preferring partial truth to no effort at it. He knows what the uniform means to people who have met it in particular circumstances. He knows that his intentions, which are genuine, which are as clean as he can make them, do not cancel the weight of what he is wearing or the cost of what it has done in his absence and before his arrival. He knows all of this with the directness of someone who believes that knowing something is the first requirement of dealing with it honestly. Beat. He is not naive. He is idealistic. He still believes that medicine can be a bridge across things that politics cannot cross, that the body's need for healing does not recognize the borders that govern everything else, that in the space of a medical exchange something real and human can happen that supersedes the institutional. He believes this. He has always believed this. He has also learned, in various postings, that the belief needs to be held lightly, that it is a direction rather than a certainty, a thing to work toward rather than a thing that happens automatically. Breath. He is a disciplined person. He has always been able to put feeling in its proper place, to note it, acknowledge it, and then direct his attention to the things that are within his capacity to act on. He is good at this. It has served him well. He picks up the journal again. He opens it to the last page. He reads his own final line, "I'm almost certain I was wrong." He takes the pen. He adds, beneath it, beat. He adds, "I didn't ask her name." He closes the journal. Beat. He turns off the lamp. The tent goes dark. The mountains outside the tent opening are still there, present in their density, their darkness denser than the sky around them, a depth that the stars illuminate without diminishing. Patient. Permanent. Watching everything with the indifference of things that have outlasted every feeling that has ever been felt beneath them and will outlast every feeling yet to come. Breath. Arjun lies on the cot. He looks at the tent ceiling. He listens to the camp sounds settling toward sleep, the card game ending, the phone's film music going quiet, Rahul's voice finally, mercifully, trailing off mid-sentence in the way of someone who has talked himself to sleep, which is a habit Arjun has been witnessing across 3 postings and finds both inexplicable and deeply reassuring. Beat. He is not going to think about this anymore tonight. He is going to be sensible. He is going to sleep, and he is going to be up before 6, and he is going to talk to Tiwari about his foot, and he is going to inventory the remaining antiseptic, and he is going to do what he came here to do. Breath. He does not pick up the journal again. He is clear about this. Pause. He doesn't, after all, know her name. Scene 7. The Emergency. 2 days later. A child falls from a walnut tree. The village's impossible question. What you need and what you fear are the same thing. First real contact. A dropped bottle. 3 feet. Not touching. 2 days later, mid-morning. The light is high and clean, the sky over the valley a blue so unambiguous it seems to be making a point. Breath. Amira is coming back from the upper stream, the tributary that runs north of the village, where certain water plants grow in the shallower sections that don't grow anywhere else she has found. She comes here for the stems and leaves that give her the pale greens and soft blues that no synthetic thread can replicate, a green that contains gray, a blue that contains silver. Colors that exist at the intersection of water and stone and light and have that quality in them, that sense of being composed of several things at once. She collects them in a cloth bag, keeping them damp. She goes once every 2 weeks. She has been going since she was a girl, collecting what her grandmother taught her to collect, with a care that has become instinctive, taking only what she needs, leaving the rest to grow back. Beat. She hears the screaming before she sees what's happened. A child's voice first, pure, high, the specific register of pain that has no self-consciousness in it yet, that is just the sound the body makes when something is very wrong. Then a woman's voice over it, the mother's voice, at a register that is trying to be calm because it knows calm is needed and cannot quite achieve it because calm is not what the body produces when a child is screaming like that. Then more voices, gathering, overlapping, the particular sound of a community converging on a crisis. Breath. Amira picks up her pace without thinking. By the time she reaches the walnut grove at the edge of the village, 8 or 10 people have assembled around a boy of perhaps 9. She knows him by sight, Tariq's age when Tariq was 9. The age when boys are simultaneously convinced they are invulnerable and entirely unprepared for the consequences of acting on this conviction. He is sitting against the base of a walnut tree with his right arm at an angle that is immediately, obviously wrong, not the subtle wrongness of something strained or sprained, but the direct wrongness of something that has been broken. The arm held at an angle, the arm does not hold itself. The branch above is broken. He fell a long way. He is trying not to cry and failing completely, the tears coming in the unstoppable way they come when the body has decided to cry regardless of what the person attached to it would prefer. His mother is trying to hold him still, and he won't be held, the pain making him restless, making stillness impossible. Beat. Someone has already run to the camp. The argument erupts in the crowd the way this argument always erupts in the valley, not loud, not with accusation, but with the urgency of people who know there is no perfect answer, some voices for calling them, some voices against. The particular argument that has no resolution because what you need and what you fear are the same thing, and there is no way to choose between them that doesn't cost something. An older man says the boy needs a hospital. The camp is not a hospital. A woman says the camp has a doctor. Someone else says the camp has a medic, which is different. The boy's mother says nothing. She is holding her son's face with both hands and looking at him. Breath. Arjun arrives in 4 minutes. He comes alone. He has understood, quickly, that in this valley you bring only as much presence as the situation requires, and a child with a broken arm requires medicine and calm and nothing else, certainly not an audience in uniform. He carries his kit over one shoulder. He is already reading the scene as he crosses the grove, the angle of the arm, the boy's pallor, the mother's posture, the crowd's position, and he has the situation's essential facts before he reaches the tree. Beat. He kneels. He puts the kit down. He looks at the boy directly, at the boy's face, before he looks at the arm, because the boy is not an arm. The boy is a person, and the person is terrified and in serious pain and needs to know that the person helping him sees him. Arjun says, in Hindi first, "Hey, I've got you. I'm right here." And then, pulling from the Kashmiri he has been practicing every evening, the vocabulary of medicine and comfort he assembled before this posting because he knew he would need it, he says, "Shinta Makar. Don't worry. I'm right here." Breath. The boy stopped screaming for exactly 1 moment. In the surprise, the soldier spoke in the language and spoke it correctly, with the right inflection, in the right register, and there was nothing performed about it. The boy stares at him for 1 moment in which the pain and the astonishment are happening simultaneously. Then the pain reasserts itself and he goes back to crying, but it is quieter now, a different kind of crying, the kind that has found a container for itself, that has somewhere to go. He cries, but he stays still. Beat. Arjun works. He examines the arm with hands that are trained and thorough and gentle simultaneously, the palpation along the radius, feeling for the fracture line, assessing the alignment, checking distal pulse and sensation. His face communicating nothing that would frighten the boy, while his hands gather everything he needs to know. Clean fracture, mid-shaft radius. Alignment is good. The bone ends have not displaced significantly, which means what needs to happen next is manageable here, with what he has. Breath. He looks up at the mother. He speaks in Hindi, slowly, in the simplest vocabulary. He is explaining what the break is and what he needs to do to stabilize it, and as he speaks, he finds the man in the crowd who has been translating with his eyes. The man who understands both languages, who has been standing slightly forward of the others with the body language of someone who is trying to decide whether to offer and has not quite decided. Arjun looks at him directly. He says, "Would you help me explain?" Not a demand. A request. The specific request of someone who understands that asking is better than assuming. Beat. The man hesitates. It is a real hesitation, not short, perhaps 4 seconds, in which his face moves through several positions and settles on one. Then he translates. Simply, directly, what Arjun said. The mother listens. She looks at Arjun at the face, then at the hands, then back at the face. She gives a single, taut nod. The nod of someone who is giving the only trust that is currently available to them and is fully aware of what it costs and is giving it anyway because her son's arm is at an angle it should not be at. Breath. Arjun gives the boy a low dose of pain medication from the kit, quick, careful, explaining each step as he goes, to the boy, not over him, as if the boy's understanding matters. Because the boy's understanding matters. He waits 2 minutes. He talks to the boy in the interim about walnut trees, which he has genuinely been admiring since he arrived, about the specific branch that is now broken above them, about whether the boy has climbed this particular tree before or whether this was a first attempt. The boy, through his pain-reduced crying, indicates that he has climbed it before. Many times. Beat. Arjun says, "I believe you. It's a good tree." Something in the crowd shifts by an almost imperceptible degree. Breath. He sets the arm. The procedure is brief, practiced, accomplished with the minimum of movement that causes the minimum of pain while achieving the maximum of what needs to be achieved. The boy screams once, short, complete, and then goes silent with the shock and exhaustion that follow the worst of pain, and then, slowly, begins to breathe again in the longer, more regular rhythm of someone whose body has processed the worst of it and is beginning to consider the aftermath. Arjun splints the arm, the splint assembled with an efficiency that looks effortless because he has done it many times, the padding correct, the position correct, the support exactly where it needs to be. Beat. He gives the mother instructions, elevation, no pressure, the signs to watch for that would mean something more serious, how to get to him if those signs appear. He speaks clearly and the translator translates and the mother nods at each point. Then Arjun looks at the boy. The boy looks back, exhausted, red-eyed, his face the face of a child who has been through something and is now on the other side of it. Arjun says, in Kashmiri, "Bahut hoshiyar." Beat. Very brave. The boy almost smiles. Almost. The effort of it is visible and real and not quite completed, but the impulse is there, which is its own kind of arrival. Breath. Arjun steps back. He gives the space back to the mother and the child and the crowd. He does not linger in it, does not claim the gratitude, does not reorganize the room around what he has just done. He packs the kit. He stands up. The mother gives him a short, formal acknowledgement, not warmth, not gratitude that permits familiarity, but a direct, contained recognition, you did what was needed. He accepts this exactly as it is offered, neither more nor less than it is. Beat. The crowd is dispersing. People returning to what they were doing before the screaming, the ordinary things, the morning's ordinary business. Arjun picks up his bag. He turns toward the camp. Something rolls across the ground at his feet. Pause. A small brown glass bottle, medicinal, one of the kit's smaller vials, rolled loose from an imperfectly secured side pocket. It rolls 3 feet and stops against a tree root. Amira is closest to it. She has been in the crowd since near the beginning, not at the center, not claiming a position, but present, standing where she could see. She has watched his hands the entire time. She has watched the way he spoke to the boy, not over him, not past him. She has watched the way he stepped back. Breath. She bends and picks up the bottle. She turns. He is standing 3 feet from her, bag in hand, and he is looking at her, with recognition, yes, the recognition of the market, 3 seconds across 40 feet, but also with something more careful than recognition. Something considered. Something that has been thought about since it happened, and has arrived here already carrying its thinking. Beat. She holds the bottle out. He steps forward and takes it. Their hands do not touch. Close. Beat. Not touching. He says in Kashmiri, Shukriya. Pause. She looks at him. Something in her goes still, not the stillness of fear or refusal, but a different kind of stillness. The kind that happens when the thing being heard requires you to pause everything else to hear it properly. He said it right. Not the careful, effortful mispronunciation of someone performing courtesy, not the approximation of someone who looked a word up and is using it once. The inflection is right. The brevity of it is right. He said it the way a person says thank you in their own language, directly, without ceremony. Because he learned it that way. Because he learned it to be understood by the people he is trying to help. Breath. She says, you said it right. He says, I've been practicing. She looks at him. There is something in her face, she is aware of it, it is not entirely within her control, that is not warmth. Not yet. Not anything so large and so decided as warmth. It is the shape of a space where warmth might, under very different circumstances, in a very different arrangement of the world, be possible. The possibility of warmth. The outline of it. Nothing inside the outline yet. Beat. She says, the boy, he'll be okay? Arjun says, clean fracture. Good alignment. He'll be climbing that tree again in 6 weeks. Maybe 8. He'll do 6. She says nothing for a moment. Then, that's a very specific guess. He says, I've met 9-year-old boys. Beat. Something in her face shifts. It is almost imperceptible, the small degree of shift that is not a smile and not its absence, but something between them, a movement of the muscles near her eyes, a slight change in the quality of her attention. She says, yes. So have I. Pause. She starts to go. She turns, takes a step. He says, I'm Arjun. Beat. She stops. She turns back. She looks at him fully, not the measuring look, not the look that categorizes and calculates and files. A different look. More direct. More contained. She says, I know who you are. Breath. And she leaves. She walks back through the walnut grove and into the village, and the morning continues around her, the ordinary sounds and ordinary light of the valley doing what the valley does, which is simply proceed. He watches her go. He stands in the grove with his bag in his hand, slightly longer than is strictly necessary. Beat. He picks up his bag slowly, with the particular deliberateness of someone who is using the physical action to buy time for a process happening somewhere else. He starts toward camp. He walks about 3 steps. He stops walking. He stands there in the walnut grove. Beat. He realizes he didn't ask her name. Pause again. He resumes walking. The camp is the other direction. Scene 8, first words after coda. Evening. 2 rooms. 1 scene. Amira at the frame. Arjun and the journal. The china leaf finished. 1 line crossed out, still legible. 2 separate lights burning. Evening. The valley going soft. Breath. Amira sits at the embroidery frame. The china leaf. The crimson thread. The house is quieter than usual. Zainab has gone to bed early, which she sometimes does, which Amira takes as its own kind of information and does not press, and Nanny Jan is in the next room. The sound of her there sufficient. The specific quality of that presence in the next room, one of the things Amira has placed, quietly and permanently, in the category of things she will not let herself lose. Beat. She stitches. The needle goes through at a slightly more forceful angle than usual, not enough to distort the fabric, not enough that anyone else would notice, but she notices. Her hands are telling her something that her mind is still negotiating. She lets them. She stitches with that slightly more than usual force, and she tells herself she is not thinking about the emergency in the walnut grove, and she is not thinking about a glass bottle and 3 feet of distance, and a word said with the right inflection. Breath. She is telling herself this while thinking about exactly these things. She thinks, he learned Kashmiri to talk to his patients. She turns this fact over the way she turns a piece of embroidery to look at the back, where the true character of the work is, where you can see whether the maker knew what they were doing or was only performing the appearance of it. He learned Kashmiri so that the people he was trying to help could understand what he was saying and could trust that he was there for them. Not to perform. Not to impress anyone. To be understood by the people in front of him. This is a different motivation than she has encountered in the uniform before. She does not know what to do with a different motivation. Beat. She thinks about Tariq. She always thinks about Tariq when she begins to soften toward anything. It is automatic. It is not a choice. It is what the grief does, and she has come to understand it as protective rather than destructive, a reminder of what softening has cost before, a reminder of what is at stake. She thinks about the checkpoint. She thinks about the uniform, not his uniform, not his face, the uniform as a category, as a weight, as the thing that costs people things they cannot afford to lose. She thinks about what Tariq's voice would say about this, and she thinks she knows, and she thinks the answer is complicated, because Tariq was not a simple person, and she misses his complexity as much as she misses his laugh. Breath. She pulls the thread. She is not softening. She is simply noticing. That is all. She is noticing that a person exists who, for the first time in 3 years, makes her think that she would like to talk to someone she has not already talked to 100 times. Who makes her feel the existence of a possible conversation as a shape, as an outline. She is noticing this. She is not acting on it. She is sitting with the noticing and the needle and the crimson thread and the quiet house and the mountains going dark outside the window, and she realizes, not immediately deciding anything. Beat. This is itself unusual. She decides things quickly. She has had to. The life requires it. Not deciding immediately is its own kind of information. She notes it. She stitches on. Breath. The thread reaches the last row. The last row of fill. The last section of the left half of the leaf. She works it stitch by stitch, the angle consistent, the lay even, the tension correct. The crimson comes to the edge. She brings the thread to the back, ties it off. She cuts the thread. He writes, "The boy will be fine." The radius fracture was clean, alignment was excellent, no neurovascular compromise, no complications. He was brave in the specific way of 9-year-olds, which is to say he was not brave at all and was entirely brave. Both simultaneously. He'll climb the tree again in 6 weeks. Maybe 8. He'll do 6. The crowd gave me 2 things today. The refusal from 3 of them, which I expected and which I do not resent. And 1 man translating. I had not expected that. It matters. It is small and it matters enormously, and I am going to note it and not make more of it than it is and also not make less of it than it is. He translated because a child was hurt. That is the reason. I accept it as the reason, and I'm grateful for it exactly on those terms. He pauses. He writes. She looked at me like she already knew every version of the story and had decided not to start reading it again. He stares at this for a moment. He draws a line through it. Beat. The line is thorough. The line is complete. The sentence is crossed out. He can still read it through the line, which means the crossing out is a gesture toward discretion rather than an actual erasure. He does not cross it out again. He leaves it, crossed out and still visible, which is its own honest position. Breath. He closes the journal. He lies down on the cot with one arm behind his head, the particular position of a person who is not immediately going to sleep, who has things to be quiet with first. He looks at the tent ceiling. He thinks, I am not here to want things. This is a thought he has had before and has always found reliable. He thinks it again now and finds it somewhat less reliable than usual. Not wrong, still true, still the correct position, but slightly less automatic in its authority than it has been before this posting, this market, this walnut grove, this radius fracture, this dropped bottle, these 3 feet of not touching. Beat. He thinks, I don't know her name. Pause. He does not pick up the journal. He has already crossed something out tonight, that is sufficient. He breathes. The valley breathes around him. The generators hum their low note, and the stream somewhere runs its cold fast note, and the mountains do what mountains do. He breathes. He breathes. Breath. Tomorrow he will be sensible. He is clear about this. Closing, night falls on the valley. Wide view. The valley as it was at the opening, but changed by what has moved through it. Night. 2 lights still burning. The narrator returns. The valley holds one more breath. Night now. The valley in its full dark. Breath. The peaks have gone from gold to rose to ash to the particular blue-black that is not quite any of those colors, but contains all of them, the way memory contains its sources, imprecisely, completely, with an authority that accurate description cannot compete with. The Dao Lake accepts the moon, a full, uncomplicated acceptance, the water giving the moon back to the sky in a reflection so complete that for a long moment you cannot tell which is real and which is image, which is the thing and which is the thing being remembered. Beat. The china trees stand in their rows along the road, their roots older than the oldest foundation in the village, older than the oldest argument, older than grief in its current form, though grief itself, grief is older than the trees. The trees have grown through grief. They have grown through everything. They stand in the dark with the patience of things that have understood, through sheer duration, that the most important quality is the one that allows for continued standing. Breath. The checkpoints are lit with their weak electric light. The generators they run are cheap and slightly inadequate for the mountain cold, and the soldiers who stand at them in the small hours are cold in the way young people are cold when they are doing something serious in a serious place and cannot show how cold they are. They are mostly young. They are doing what they were sent to do. The valley moves around them the way the river moves around stone, not through them, around them, finding the available passage, continuing. Beat. In the walnut grove at the edge of the village, the broken branch has been pulled down. The tree stands without it. It has stood without branches before. It will stand without branches again. The boy is home. He is sleeping with his right arm elevated on 2 pillows. His mother checked the pillows 3 times before she let herself sit down, the splint correct, the arm cooling toward comfortable, the pain settled to the dull specific ache of healing already begun. The body knows what to do with a clean break. The body has always known this. The work of repair is already, quietly, underway. Breath. 2 lights still burning in the valley. Beat. One in a house by the stream, the lamp already out, but the woman who sat beneath it is still awake, lying in the dark with the finished china leaf on the table beside her, the crimson almost exactly right, the leaf complete. She is not thinking. She is being quiet with something that does not yet have a name. She has left the question open. This is new. She breathes. The pale blue shawl is on its hook by the door and the mountains are outside the window doing what mountains do, and she breathes and she lets herself not decide yet. Breath. One in a tent by the camp perimeter, the lamp not yet out. The man beneath it lying on his cot with his journal closed under one hand and looking at the tent ceiling with the specific attention of someone who is listening for something he cannot quite identify and has stopped pretending he is not listening. He breathes. The stars above the mountain peaks are doing what stars have always done, burning at distances so vast they have no practical relationship to anything being felt beneath them, and yet the light arrives. The light always arrives. He breathes. Beat. The narrator returns. The valley holds its breath. Pause. It has been holding its breath for years, years of grief and years of silence and years of the particular exhausted courage it takes to get up every morning in a place that has asked everything of you and still, stubbornly, unreasonably, manages to be beautiful. It has held years of that breath. It holds one more now. Beat. It has room. It has always had room. The valley is very large on the inside. Breath. Two people in separate worlds. Separately awake. The distance between them measured not in the 100 meters between a house by the stream and a tent by the camp perimeter, measured in everything that sits between those 2 points, a checkpoint, a uniform. A boy who wanted to study architecture and was 22 years old and wore a red jacket on the wrong morning, a grandmother who communicates in fragments and sees everything, a pale blue shawl that cost 3 months of savings and is worn every single day, a journal with a crossed-out line that is still completely legible. All of this sits between them. All of this is real and true and not going anywhere. Beat. And yet, something has begun. Without permission. Without announcement. In the way that beginnings always begin, small, unremarkable in the moment of their beginning, detectable only later when you look back and try to find the point at which things changed and realize it was much earlier than you thought, in a look across a market, in 3 seconds, in an onion, in a dropped bottle, in the inflection of a single word said correctly for the right reason. That is where it was. That small. That early. Breath. Tomorrow they will both be sensible. Tomorrow they will stay inside their respective worlds and do the things that their worlds require and remember who they are and what they owe and what they cannot afford. Amira will take the finished china leaf to the shop in the old city and begin the next piece. Arjun will talk to Tiwari about his foot and inventory the antiseptic. The valley will be exactly what it is, beautiful and weighted and asking everything of everyone inside it. They will be sensible. They have both decided this. Beat. Long pause. Tomorrow is not tonight. Tonight, the valley breathes. The china trees stand in their patient rows along the road. The peaks hold their blue-black dark. The lake holds the moon and the moon is held. The heron is somewhere on the bank in its sleeping stillness, one leg tucked, the reed beds whispering around it. The saffron fields at the edge of the village hold their purple quiet, their red threads furled inside them, waiting. Breath. The mountains watch with the patience of things that have seen every kind of love arrive in this valley. Every kind. Love that bloomed in peacetime and love that found its way through conflict. Love that crossed things it had no business crossing and love that held at the boundary and never moved. Love that was simple and love that was impossible and love that was both at once, which is the most common kind in a valley where simplicity and impossibility are often the same landscape. The mountains have seen all of it. They have seen what it costs and what it gives, and they hold no position on the matter because they are mountains and their business is duration. Beat. And sometimes, in the impossible places, in the weighted places, in the places that have asked everything and taken everything and are still somehow standing, something flowers anyway. Not in spite of the difficulty. Through it. The way wildflowers grow through barbed wire, not around it. Through it. Taking what is available. Finding the light. Breath. The valley holds one more breath. The stars burn. The 2 lights burn, one already dark, one nearly. 2 people breathing in the same valley in separate rooms, separately awake. Something begun between them that neither of them named and neither of them asked for, and that is, for the moment. Still only the size of a look and a word said correctly and 3 seconds across a market and a thread that snapped clean and was retied. Beat. That is all. That is everything. Breath. Long pause. End of episode 1. Episode summary card, Gold Thread Studios.